And so here's what happens. We're going to read from Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 to 13. Paul is writing here, but he's also writing what he's doing. So it's Paul here speaking. He says, "But when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face, for what he did was very wrong. When he first arrived, he ate with the Gentile believers who were not circumcised. So he ate with anyone who's not Jewish. But afterward, when some friends of James came, Peter wouldn't eat with the Gentiles anymore. He was afraid of criticism from these people who insisted on the necessity of circumcision. As a result, other Jewish believers followed Peter's hypocrisy, and even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy." Never meet your heroes, they say. So what's really happening here? Paul is confronting Peter, the rock on whom the church was being built. Peter shares a meal with Gentiles at first, no problem. He's there. But then a certain group shows up, and suddenly Peter is nervous of their opinion. Suddenly sharing a table and a meal, sitting beside these people, all of a sudden meant something completely different. And so he pulls back. He changes tables. And Paul is livid about it. Why is Paul so upset? Well, because a meal is never a meal, is it? Sharing a table isn't just sharing a table. Where we sit and who we sit with matters. And that's why what happens in Galatians 2 around a shared meal matters so much. In Antioch, what is now southern part of modern-day Turkey, there's a vibrant, growing center of Christian mission. And in it, these Jewish and Gentile believers are sitting down at the same table. It's radical. It's absolutely radical. Walls are coming down around these meals. New humanity is taking shape. A kind of community Jesus had envisioned. A diverse, multi-ethnic, but equal group of people. Equal not because they have achieved something or because they proved something or they did something or they have right answers, but equal because of the grace of Jesus. And Peter was right there with them, eating, laughing, living out the gospel of welcome until he wasn't. A group arrives and Peter shrinks. He pulls back. And so Paul confronts him publicly. Not because Peter made a social misstep. We have to really catch this. It's not because Peter just he kind of made a mistake or he kind of goofed. No, Paul confronts him because Peter in his action is distorting the good news. He's distorting the gospel. By refusing the table, he was saying these people aren't fully like us. It's not just, I don't know. It's a question of inclusion. He says, no, these people are not like us. They're not true Christians. They're not the chosen people of God, not yet. He shrinks and distorts the good news. But in that culture, sharing a meal wasn't just a casual or neutral act. It was bold, public declaration. The person across from me belongs. They are welcome. They're like family. Now imagine if that's the case and that was the cultural truth, imagine now the Pharisees, men deeply committed to following every command of God, striving for purity so they could dwell in the presence of God. And then Jesus comes along, sitting at a table with sinners, and through his actions declaring, this one sitting across from me at the table, this outcast, is family. They belong. But I also want to say there's something else going on here that we need to be very careful when we read this. Because when we read this, and when we read Paul confronting Peter, and as you read this chapter through the week in your home churches or in your own, maybe what comes to mind is that we read this and say, finally, somebody tells them like it is. Finally, Paul saw wrong, and he was bold and courageous and unflinching, and he did it. He spoke the truth. And in that kind of reading, we may actually miss the point of this chapter and jump into imagining ourselves being like Paul. And we might be tempted to imagine ourselves calling those people, the ones I talked about last week. I said, as you read this, there's going to be people that come to mind, faces, communities, groups. And you might be tempted to think of those people, the ones you disagree with, the ones that are, they do church wrong, they do Christianity wrong, they do politics wrong. And you might imagine yourself being in Paul's place, calling them out, telling them what it's really like. And you position yourself in his shoes. But this is why we need to read so carefully. Because Bible is brilliant. And in its brilliance, it often holds up a mirror. And the person it's telling you about, the one who failed, who backed out, who gave into pressure, who was hypocritical, isn't just those people. It's you. And it's me. It's me and you. It's us. Whenever we remove ourselves from them, those people that we want to just tell off. Whenever we, for good religious reasons, separate ourselves and place them into a category of unworthy, undesirable, unwanted, whenever we place them into second tier of people or class, whenever we do that, we are Peter. Peter's failure wasn't just a moment of awkwardness or rudeness. It was a gospel failure. By pulling away, he distorted the message of grace. He sent a signal that some people belong more than others, that some were second-class citizens in God's kingdom, and Paul wasn't having any of it. And so we have to be really careful when we read these passages and imagine ourselves as Paul calling them out, those people that came up to our minds that just don't do things right. Because when we do that, we actually place ourselves in Peter's shoes and not Paul's. Because the gospel is an announcement of one new humanity, one new family in Christ, not defined by race, law, or status, but by grace. Friends, the gospel, the good news, pulls up more chairs to the table, not fewer. It opens the table. The Apostle Paul is livid with anyone who would dare to challenge that good news. He's furious with anyone who says, "How dare you close this table? How dare you do this and actually influence others to do it as well?" Paul, a Pharisee who for so long in his life promoted the closed table, but after encountering the resurrected Christ, cannot and will not close the table again. Will not do it. His whole life was about the closed table. And he encounters Jesus and he says, no, we can't. What are we talking about? We can't ever go back to that. Peter, what are you doing? So can I invite you to consider something this week? Can I invite you in your home church or in your solitude time as you read Galatians, as you ponder in this, can I invite you to examine your table? To ask, who's there? Who's at my table? Who's missing? And who would you hesitate to sit with if others were watching? That's hard work. But can I invite you, as I'm going to do so myself, to examine my table, asking myself who's there, who's missing, and who would I hesitate to sit with if others were watching? And as you sit on this, and as you examine, and as you ponder, as you pray through this, then can I invite you into some action steps so that you can then practice the open table. So as you have examined and to practice the open table, to do something small that says to someone, you belong. And maybe sit with someone who feels overlooked. Or maybe make space for someone different than you at your table. See, the gospel is good news that grace is for everyone, available to everyone, and the table is open and more chairs are being set every day. So the gospel says, pull up a chair. There's room for you at this table.